Good morning, children. Today we will again continue with the chapter Making of a Global World. We have to start from page number 96, India and the Great Depression. If we look at the impact of the depression on India, we realize how integrated the global economy had become by the early 20th century. The tremors of a crisis in one part of the world were quickly relayed to other parts, affecting lives, economies, and societies worldwide. That means the Great Depression affected the whole world. Globally, it had its economic effects everywhere. In the 19th century, as you have seen, colonial India had become an exporter of agricultural goods and importer of manufactures. Underline this line. Colonial India had become an exporter of agricultural goods and importer of manufacturers. The depression immediately affected Indian trade. Keep on underlining wherever you see the impact of Great Depression on Indian trade. India's exports and imports nearly halved between 1928 and 1934. And international prices as international prices crashed, prices in India also plunged. Between 1928 and 34, wheat prices in India fell by 50%. Keep on underlining, all these are important. How did the Great Depression affect India? Peasants and farmers suffered more than urban dwellers. Though agricultural prices fell sharply, the colonial government refused to reduce revenue demands. Peasants producing for the world market were the worst hit. And keep on underlining all these things. Peasants producing for the world market were the worst hit. Consider the jute producers of Bengal. They grew raw jute that was processed in factories for export in the form of gunny bags. But as exports collapsed, the price of raw jute crashed more than 60%. Peasants who borrowed in the hope of better times or to increase output in the hope of higher incomes faced ever lower prices and fell deeper and deeper into debt. Thus, the Bengal jute growers lament. Grow more jute, brothers, with the hope of greater cash. Costs and debts of jute will make your hopes get dashed. When you have spent all your money and got the crop off the ground, traders sitting at home will pay only ₹5 amount. So this shows that the hard work which the jute producers were doing, they did not get the required amount of money. They were not paid well. They had to sell jute at very low prices. Across India, peasants' indebtedness increased. They used up their savings, mortgaged lands, and sold whatever jewelry and precious metals they had to meet their expenses. Keep on underlining, all these are the effects of Great Depression on India, on Indian peasants. In these depression years, India became an exporter of precious metals, notably gold. The famous economist John Maynard Keynes thought that Indian gold exports promoted global economic recovery. They certainly helped speed up Britain's recovery, but did little for the Indian peasant. Rural India was thus seething with unrest when Mahatma Gandhi launched the civil disobedience movement at the height of the Depression in 1931. The depression proved less grim for urban India. It was less serious. Because of falling prices, those with fixed incomes, say town-dwelling landowners who received rents and middle-class salaried employees, now found themselves better off because every month they were at least getting a fixed amount of money as their salary. Everything cost less. Industrial investment also grew as the government extended tariff protection to industries under the pressure of nationalist opinion. Rebuilding a world economy, the post-war era. The Second World War broke out a mere 2 decades after the end of the First World War. It was fought between the Axis powers, namely Nazi Germany, Japan and Italy, and the Allies, Britain, France, the Soviet Union and the US. It was a war waged for 6 years on many fronts, in many places, over land, on sea and in the air. Once again, death and destruction was enormous. At least 60 million people, or about 3% of the world's 1939 population, are believed to have been killed, directly or indirectly, as a result of the war. Millions more were injured. Unlike in earlier wars, most of these deaths took place outside the battlefields. Many more civilians than soldiers died from war-related causes. Various parts of Europe and Asia were devastated, and several cities were destroyed by aerial bombardment or relentless artillery attacks. The war caused an immense amount of economic devastation and social disruption. Reconstruction promised to be long and difficult. That means all those losses which the people had incurred, whether it was financial loss, loss of lives, or whatever problems they had faced due to this war, it will take time to make good the loss. Two crucial influences shaped post-war reconstruction. The first was the US's emergence as a dominant economic, political and military power in the Western world. Please underline this, you should learn. Two crucial influences shaped post-war reconstruction. That means two important things were noticed after the war. First was US becoming as a dominant economic, political and military power in the Western world. The second was the dominance of the Soviet Union. It had made huge sacrifices to defeat Nazi Germany and transformed itself from a backward agricultural country into a world power during the very years when the capitalist world was trapped in the Great Depression. So these were the two important things which were noticed after the war. Post-war settlement and the Bretton Woods institution. Now again here many things are there which I will tell you, you have to learn that. Economists and politicians drew two key lessons from interwar economic experiences. First, an industrial society based on mass production cannot be sustained without mass consumption. There were two important things which were noticed. First was, an industrial society based on mass production cannot be sustained without mass consumption. That means unless there was mass consumption of commodities, mass production is not going to prove useful. But to ensure mass consumption, there was a need for high and stable incomes. Because if people want to consume something, they will have to purchase that. And for purchasing anything, they will require money. Incomes could not be stable if employment was unstable. Everything is interrelated. If there is less employment, people will have less income, they will buy less things, they will consume less things, hence there will be no use of mass production. So everything is interlinked. Incomes could not be stable if employment was unstable. Thus, stable incomes also required steady full employment. For for steady income, steady employment was a necessity. But markets alone could not guarantee full employment. Therefore, governments would have to step in to minimize fluctuations of prices, output, and employment. Economic stability could be ensured only through the intervention of the government. That means only taking the support of the market to give employment was not enough. It was necessary that the government should intervene and the government should provide different opportunities to provide employment. The second lesson related to a country's economic links with the outside world. The second lesson related to a country's economic links with the outside world. That means if a country had its business links with other countries, then only there could be some rise in the economic aspect of that country. The goal of full employment could only be achieved if governments had power to control flow of goods, capital and labor. Again, this was an important aspect. The goal of full employment could be achieved if governments had the power to control the flow of goods, capital and labor. Earlier also we have studied that goods, capital and labor all are interlinked with each other. So if any government had control over its capital, over its labor power, that means the manpower and the goods which had to be exported, then employment opportunities will gradually increase. Thus, in brief, the main aim of the post-war international economic system was to preserve economic stability and full employment in the industrial world. So these two things were very necessary: in economic stability and giving complete employment in the industrial world. Its framework was agreed upon at the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference held in July 1944 at Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, USA. So, its framework, what framework? The framework to see that there was economic stability and there was complete employment in the industrial world. This framework was agreed upon in the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference, which was held in 1944 at Bretton Woods in New Hampshire in USA. The Bretton Woods Conference established the International Monetary Fund. Please underline, this is very, very important. The previous paragraph also is very important. Learn that paragraph and the paragraph which I will read now. Please keep on underlining these things. These are very important. A separate question comes on Bretton Woods in the board exams. The Bretton Woods Conference established the International Monetary Fund. We all have heard about IMF, International Monetary Fund. It was established by the Bretton Woods Conference. The Bretton Woods Conference established the International Monetary Fund to deal with external surpluses and deficits of its member nations. Underline, what was the need, what was the purpose of establishing the IMF? To deal with the surplus, whatever surplus production was done, and the deficits of its member nations. What all problems, what all things were in short supply among the member nations. In order to deal with these situations, the IMF was established. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, popularly known as the World Bank, all of us have heard of World Bank also, was set up to finance post-war reconstruction. In order to make good the losses, in order to provide financial help after the war, the World Bank was set up. So underline all this and please learn this. The IMF and the World Bank are referred to as the Bretton Woods institutions, sometimes the Bretton Woods twins. Underline. Very, very important things are written. Learn all these things. The IMF and the World Bank are referred to as the Bretton Woods institutions, sometimes also known as the Bretton Woods twins. The post-war international economic system is also often described as the Bretton Woods system. Underline everything, children. Please learn this whole paragraph and the previous paragraph. They are very important. The post-war international economic system is also known as the Bretton Woods system. The IMF and the World Bank commenced financial operations in 1947. Decision making in these institutions is controlled by the Western industrial powers. The US has an effective right of veto over key IMF and World Bank decisions. That right of veto means if the US feels that on any issue it does not agree to the decisions, it has the right to say no. It has the right to show its disagreement. The US has an effective right of veto over key IMF and World Bank decisions. Whatever the World Bank decides or the IMF decides, if the US does not agree to any particular decision, it has the right to say no. This is called the veto power. The international monetary system is the system linking national currencies and monetary system. The Bretton Woods system was based on fixed exchange rates. Underline. In this system, national currencies, for example, the Indian rupee, were pegged to the dollar at a fixed exchange rate. The early post-war years. The Bretton Woods system inaugurated an era of unprecedented growth of trade and incomes for the Western industrial nations and Japan. That means with the introduction of the Bretton Woods system, the era which would witness the growth in trade and the growth in incomes for the Western industrial nations and Japan was now open. World trade grew annually at over 8% between 1950 and 1970 and incomes at nearly 5%. The growth was also mostly stable without large fluctuations. For much of this period, the unemployment rate, for example, averaged less than 5% in most industrial countries. These decades also saw the worldwide spread of technology and enterprise. Developing countries were in a hurry to catch up with the advanced industrial countries. Therefore, they invested vast amounts of capital importing industrial plant and equipment featuring modern technology. Decolonization and independence. When the Second World War ended, large parts of the world were still under European colonial rule. Over the next 2 decades, most colonies in Asia and Africa emerged as free, independent nations. They were, however, overburdened by poverty and lack of resources, and their economies and societies were handicapped by long periods of colonial rule. The IMF and the World Bank were designed to meet the financial needs of the industrial countries. Underline. They were not equipped to cope with the challenge of poverty and lack of development in the former colonies. But as Europe and Japan rapidly rebuilt their economies, they grew less dependent on the IMF and the World Bank. Thus, from the late 1950s, the Bretton Woods institutions began to shift their attention more towards developing countries. As colonies, many of many of the less developed regions of the world had been a part of Western empires. Now, ironically, as newly independent countries facing urgent pressures to lift their populations out of poverty, they came under the guidance of international agencies dominated by the former colonial powers. Even after many years of decolonization, the former colonial powers still controlled vital resources such as minerals and land in many of their former colonies. Here, children, you don't have to learn anything. Large corporations of other powerful countries, for example, the US, also often managed to secure rights to exploit developing countries' natural resources very cheaply. At the same time, most developing countries did not benefit from the fast growth the Western economies experienced in the 1950s and 60s. Therefore, they organized themselves as a group, the Group of 77, to demand a new international economic order. By the NIEO, they meant a system that would give them real control over their natural resources, more development assistance, fairer prices for raw materials, and better access for their manufactured goods in developed countries' markets. Underline this. What did they mean by this NIEO, that is New International Economic Order? This you should underline and learn. The end of Bretton Woods and the beginning of globalization. Despite years of stable and rapid growth, not all was well in this post-war world. From the 1960s, the rising cost of its overseas investments weakened the US finances and competitive strength. Mark this. Now here you will have to mark some of the lines as point number 1, 2, 3, 4. I will tell you this is point number 1. From 1960s, the rising cost of its overseas involvements weakened the US finances and competitive strength. Till here is point 1. The US dollar now no longer commanded confidence as the world's principal currency. It could not maintain its value in relation to gold. This eventually led to the collapse of the system of fixed exchange rates and the introduction of a system of floating exchange rates. From the mid-1970s, the international financial system also changed in important ways. Now this is point number 2. Developing countries, point number 2 begins now. Earlier, developing countries could turn to international institutions for loans and development assistance. But now they were forced to borrow from Western commercial banks and private lending institutions. This led to periodic debt crisis in the developing world and lower incomes and increased poverty, especially in Africa and Latin America. This whole is point number 2. Next para. The industrial world was also hit by unemployment. This is point number 3. The industrial world was also hit by unemployment that began rising in the mid-1970s and remained high until the early 1990s. From the late 1970s, MNCs also began to shift production operations to low-wage Asian countries. This is all point 3. Next para. China had been cut off from the post-war world economy since its revolution in 1949. But the economic policies in China and the collapse of the Soviet Union and Soviet-style communism in Western Europe brought many countries back into the fold of the world economy. Next point. Wages were relatively low in countries like China. Thus, they became attractive destinations for investment by foreign MNCs competing to capture world market. Till here is your point. Have you noticed that most of the TVs, mobile phones, toys we see in shops seem to be made in China? This is because of the low cost structure in the Chinese economy. Most importantly, its low wages. The relocation of industry to low wage countries stimulated world trade and capital flows. This is the last point. The relocation of industry to low wage countries stimulated world trade and capital flows. That means now the trade and capital was more confined towards those countries where the wages were low. In the last 2 decades, the world's economic geography has been transformed as countries such as India, China and Brazil had undergone rapid economic transformation. So these were the changes in the field of world trade, in the field of industrial development, which was witnessed after the World War. So this was the system, this was the beginning of globalization and the end of the Bretton Woods system. We can call it the beginning of globalization because now the industries were set up in different countries where wages were low. The countries who had to borrow money, who needed financial help, they had to borrow money now in a different way. The trade, the industrial setup, all were spread in different parts of the world. So this is how the globalization started. So now children, with this chapter, on this page we finish this chapter, but you should learn the Bretton Woods system properly. As I have told you, Bretton Woods system is given on page 99. You have to learn all that. Whichever paragraphs I have told you, learn those paragraphs properly, and you should, on page 100, you should know what was NIEO, what did it mean, why was it set up. I am reading these few lines once again. By the NIEO, they meant a system that would give them real control over natural resources, more development assistance, fairer prices for raw materials, and better access for their manufactured goods in developed countries' markets. So with NIEO, we can see that NIEO was very beneficial because it provided control over natural resources, fairer prices, better access to manufactured goods and more development assistance. That is why the NIEO or the new international economic order was set up. Okay, so now read this chapter once again. As I always tell you, read the chapter line by line. This chapter is a very lengthy chapter. Don't try to read the whole chapter in one day. Then you will get bored also and you might not understand things. Read 2-3 pages in a day. Keep on underlining things. Whichever things I have made you mark, you must learn them. But when you will read the chapter on your own, you might, through your intelligence, you might be able to guess that particular paragraph or lines are left to be marked. Keep on marking them and keep on learning them side by side. Don't leave anything. Okay, because from this chapter also, like I have told you, Bretton Woods system is a very common question which comes from this chapter. Then you can get the question about the Great Depression. Then I am turning back the pages to see, yes, I had told you what is Rinderpest. Questions related to Rinderpest, 3-mark question, 5-mark question, these are very, very commonly asked in the board exam. Then indentured labor, please learn all this. Then page number 81 is also very important. I had told you many things about corn laws. I had told you to mark what were the corn laws. A question of 2-mark or 3-mark is often asked regarding the corn laws. You should know that. Then page number 79. page number 78. All these you must read very carefully, especially those things which I have told you as headings or as paragraphs. Don't take it casually. This chapter is also, as other chapters, this chapter is also very important from your board exam point of view. Okay, so I hope you will listen to the instructions, and please remember your project work should be ready. I have seen that in the classwork copies, many children have either not completed their work, many have not completed, and many of you have not pasted the 2 maps which I had told you. When you will get back the copies, please paste the map, please fill the maps and complete all your work. Those maps are very important, children. They are very, very important, and they are a compulsory question in your board exam, and they are very easy to fill also. So you should not lose any marks just because of your carelessness or negligence. Then secondly, when your parents will come to collect back the classwork copies from school, I want all the projects to be sent. There are 2 projects which I have given you, 2 map projects. Please do them. I have written all the details. I have sent you the PDF. I have send you the PDF in which you can see the headings, what all headings you have to write, what places you have to fill, where are those places. Everything is there in the PDF. So please make those projects, keep them ready, and you have to send them positively on that day when your parents will come to school to collect your classwork copies back from us. Okay, this is a very, very important work. Don't take it lightly, because project work, map work is a compulsory thing. You will be marked and your marks will be sent later on. All these things will be added in your board result. So please do this work very well, very promptly, very neatly, and send it to school when we will tell you, when your parents will be told to come to school to take the copies. Thank you, children.